Let's spend a few minutes talking about work-life boundaries. It's important to have that right balance between working hard at your job, doing a good job, and being able to unplug at the end of the day and enjoy some other parts of life. I think over the past year, that balance may have gone too much in one direction, more toward work. So I want to give you some actionable ideas that you can use. My name is Ken Okel. I'm a professional speaker. I talk to audiences about ways you can improve your performance on the job. I pull from a background that includes broadcast news, hurricane relief, and professional ballet. I know, unusual combination, but in each and every field, I had to perform at a high level every day. At the end of this presentation, you'll have an opportunity to download a free guide that I've put together that highlights some of the key points that we're discussing today. You are welcome to share it with anyone who you think might benefit from it. First thing I want to talk to you about is look for the signs. Are there signs that you're putting in a little too much time in work, that the line between work life and home life is blurring? Maybe every night at 9 o'clock, you find yourself spending about an hour answering emails that have come in, or you're having to look up information. I understand. There will be those times where you got to work harder, you got to put in some extra time. It's just the job, a busy season. But if it becomes a habit, then it may start to affect your performance on the job. You come into work every day and you feel wilted instead of fresh. You're having a harder time concentrating. Maybe you're becoming more irritable. And also, there's the personal side. Do you feel like you're enjoying your after hours time, your weekends? Or are they becoming smaller and smaller? Really assess where you are and think about where you want to be. And maybe think back a few years. Were things the same? Have they gotten more challenging? If so, then I think it may be time to make some changes. One of the easiest ones to do is to start putting in some time limits. The most obvious limit is what's your quitting time. Now, I realize that if you don't necessarily work in a factory where at 5 o'clock a whistle goes off and you stop working, you may leave a couple minutes late. You may want to finish something up before you go home. I understand that. But for the most part, can you really have a defined, this is when I stop working time? Maybe it's 5 o'clock, let's say. You decide that you're going to honor that you're going to come on time, you're going to take a break for lunch, and you're going to go home when you're supposed to. There will always be lots of things to do. But how much are you really achieving if you're staying late every day? Is it really something that's paying off? Time limits can also apply for things you're doing out of the office. Maybe in your position, you need to check your email after hours. Maybe because you deal with people in different time zones, or just people are always thinking about things, sending you messages. Can you set a time limit on how long you're going to be doing that thing? So maybe you say, okay, I'm going to spend 5 minutes checking my inbox, maybe responding to a couple messages, but then I'm going to put it down, address everything else first thing tomorrow. What can happen is you start on one little thing, it becomes another. Before long, it's been an hour, and suddenly you're feeling a little burned out. So think about those time limits and what are ones that you could set up. Sometimes a time limit can even be useful to prevent perfectionism. Maybe there is a task that you need to do. It just has to be done well. It doesn't have to be done perfectly. So instead of creating what I would call the Mona Lisa, maybe you just need to do a stick figure. Think about that as well, because that can free up some time where you can spend it on some other tasks, lessen your workload a little bit if you can reduce some of that perfectionism. Related to that is momentum. Momentum, things start to move faster. And you may be creating momentum for you to be working extra hours. For instance, if your quitting time is really 5 o'clock, don't start a big project at 4:58 unless you're prepared to stay for however long it takes to get it done. Otherwise, I would say put that off for another time. Same thing can go with little tasks that you're doing after hours. Answering an email may not take that long, but in order to research it, you may have to go to some other place to get some figures, download a spreadsheet, analyze some numbers. So it's not just writing in a couple words into an email. You're having to do several different steps. You're creating job momentum that's going into your after hours time. So think about those instances where you're suddenly sucked into, let's call it a vortex, where you went to just dip your toe in, but all of a sudden you're all the way back into full work mode. You're gaining that momentum. See if you can reduce that if possible. I do think it's good to review the successful days that you've had when you've been able to get a lot of work done. You felt very good about your accomplishments. See if you can deconstruct what happened. Was it that you were just dialed in, you got a good night's sleep the night before, and you just came into work and boom, you were off? Was it because you were distracted less on the job or had fewer projects to do so you could focus more on the most important ones? This is an important analysis to do because you may be able to work just as hard and get more done if you understand when you perform at your best. For instance, I think for a lot of us, there are some parts of the day where we are great. That is the time when you should be doing your most complex work, your biggest projects. There are other times when you may be a little fried mentally. For those times, I'd say do some of those more menial tasks. You do them well, but they don't require such a level of attention. By doing this, you may be able to get more work done in the same amount of time, keeping you from having to do so much other stuff outside of the office. And finally, do celebrate your achievements. When you have put in that extra time and the result paid off, give yourself a pat on the back, salute the accomplishment, because I understand what you have done was good. Don't necessarily feel guilty about putting in extra time. Just understand you can't do it all the time. You have to have some boundaries. You have to keep yourself from burning out. But don't be afraid to say, gee, I did that really well. Think about what you did. See if you can learn from it. Be even better the next time. Find out more about me. My name is Ken Okel. As I mentioned before, I do presentations to organizations and associations about how to improve your performance on the job. Find out more about me. Go to that website, kenokel.com, just like my name. Want to shoot me an email, tvguy@kenokel.com. Funny story. When I worked in TV news, you'd be out and about in the public, like at a restaurant. Someone would recognize you. They'd want to say hi, but they wouldn't know your name. So they would just yell out something like, hey, TV guy. And if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, I welcome you to do that. I do ask in the connection request, could you mention where we first encountered one another, like in this presentation? That helps me separate you from perhaps the sneaky people who want to sell me stuff on LinkedIn that I may not want. Finally, here is that guide that I talked about earlier. It's a free download from my Google Drive. I'm putting the download link in the chat section right now. If you would also like to get it if you're watching later on YouTube or on my website, I will also include that download information. Work-life balance, I don't think is about doing one thing. I think it's about making some smart observations and taking some strategic steps to improve your performance on the job. Hope these tips help. Have an idea for a future video? Feel free to reach out to me through my email. I'm Ken Okel. Take care.